do want to make that decision to buy American or even to buy handmade, well, the labor inputs on our end as a maker, they're higher, and they're higher for a reason. We're not having our product made by a child in Bangladesh that sleeps in the factory.
Especially at the beginning of the year, I was feeling super sad. I was like, my work doesn't have a lot of meaning to it. It's cute, it's decorative, but like, it's not changing lives. It's just like part of the noise. And so I wanted to make something this year that felt like it wasn't just part of the noise, but what I can do is try to be encouraging and uplifting, because that's true to me. I think it kind of translates, especially in this era of like people craving authenticity.
That's one of the things, especially with some of the generations that are out in the market, you know, influencing things right now, and our buyers, they really want to be authentic. They want to have an authentic experience with you as the creator. They want an authentic product that's made with good materials, and you know, you have to be a green company, and you know, and give back to the environment. You have to have a mission. You really have to have that story and that passion for what you do. Otherwise, people aren't interested.
Creative entrepreneurship has entered a new era. Thanks to specialized web-based marketplaces and new social media platforms, individuals who once dreamt of inventing their own unique products and selling them to a global audience are making this a reality. And they are doing it without investors and loans and in unlikely places in the middle of flyover country. Meet the modern makers. Chris Hughes is the owner of Artifact, a company that makes briefcases, totes, aprons, and other products from the finest waxed canvas and leathers. All Artifact products are made by hand in Omaha, Nebraska.
I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was something that was forced onto me by circumstances of like not being able to find a job that would support myself long-term, not just financially, but intellectually, like something that would sustain my interest. Artifact began in 2010 in my basement with a commercial sewing machine I purchased on Craigslist. I had been working as a product manager for a tech startup, and due to the recession, I lost my job, and I had downtime as I was looking for another job. So I've always been inspired by military collectibles and field gear. So I was curious about what types of machines sewed this World War II field gear in earlier. The stitching was so thick and how it laid on top of the leather, it was just so prominent. And a little bit of research led me to the industrial machine that I purchased. And I started like repairing some of that stuff, making some pieces of my own, and then making products to give or sell to friends and acquaintances. And then in February of 2010, I set up an Etsy shop and put some pieces up there, three products. And one of them was my wax canvas lunch tote.
The first product Chris made was for himself. He wanted a good-looking, durable lunch tote to take to work.
It's funny because it was just it wasn't like an afterthought, but I needed a solution to carry my lunch in because I was working this placeholder job at the time, and I looked online, and men didn't have a lot of options in 2010, in my opinion. You could carry a metal lunchbox, you could carry like one of these nylon things that had like that were in really bright colors. And that seemed like about it. And then you had these like Japanese bento boxes, which were cool, but like I like to eat, and so like I would have needed 3 of those. And I just took scrap material on a Sunday, made that thing, sketched it out, made it, and took it to work on the following Monday. And that was the impetus of not only that design, but really Artifact from that point. It blossomed from there.
Chris is not unique in that he made his first product to fill his own needs. Stacy Bloomfield of Gingerbur had a similar experience. She launched her business on accident almost, making art for her baby's nursery.
Well, my name is Stacy Bloomfield, and I run Gingerbur, and it is an illustrative paper goods and home decor company for the young and young at heart, is what we say, and I'm based out of Springdale, Arkansas.
In the past 8 years, Gingerbur has grown from a one-woman Etsy shop selling art prints to a small business that employs 8 people, selling home goods online to consumers and wholesaling to over 400 stores.
Everything's pretty much tied together by my illustration style, which is pretty friendly and I won't say whimsical, but perhaps whimsical. I don't know. It took me about 2 years to really figure out what I was doing, and I wasn't taking it seriously at first. It was just a hobby, but then I got featured by this website, which was called Decorate, and they had a thing called like Take 5 Tuesdays where they featured Etsy artists every Tuesday. And she wrote, and I'll never forget, she was like, I don't know what it is about this art, but I just like it. All the other stuff, she had all these like great evaluations of the work and what they're doing. She's like, I don't have much to say here, except it just makes me smile.
Stacy's illustration style is loved and appreciated by many, which has led to product sales as well as licensing agreements with major companies such as Moda Fabrics and Crate & Barrel. But it's also inspired a crop of imitators.
I have had so many, I can't even begin to count all the infringement cases that I've had to deal with. I remember years ago, a company in Korea, they had taken my fox pillow and they were mass producing it and selling it. And it was like the first time I had realized what was happening, and someone emailed me and said, I don't know if you know this, and I was so frustrated, and I went to social media and I was all like, let's stop them, let's unite, let's take these people down. And they ended up pulling the fox pillow, and they sent me an apology email. But I was really young and naive, and I got lucky with that. And then the next time it happened, when it was a US company that was really well known, I had learned, you first experience something, you have this righteous indignation, you're like, I gotta go after them, I gotta stop them. Well, then when you need to pay a lawyer to help you go after them, which I did in the US, like those fees add up, and I'm a small business and I have to be very, very careful about where I'm putting that money.
Growing pains are a common issue for handmade business owners. As they become more successful, founders find themselves needing to spend more time managing the business and less time doing the creative work they love.
No one ever told me that I'd have to know as much as I do know about double entry bookkeeping, buying commercial real estate, and about vetting machinery and working through workflow and working through the ergonomics of stuff and working through all these human resources issues and just all the things that come to mind. And most of that stuff doesn't even interest me. What interests me is designing product and making product. But now I'm at a point right now where my company has been so successful that I can't justify making most, if not all, the product, because my time needs to be spent doing C-level decisions. And so I've worked myself out of my own dream job in some way.
I hired employees. I moved from my home office to an office that's actually located right here in this building that I'm currently at, but much smaller. I started figuring out that I had to like take a lot off my plate and focus on the creative part of the work. And like, so for a long time I was shipping, I was assembling, I was making, doing all that stuff. So during that kind of 2-year window, I realized, all right, I need to hire someone to help me ship, even if it's only 10 hours a week, because it's 10 hours that I'm not spending creating. For me, my whole creative process is very organic. And when I say creative process, I include the business part of running Gingerbread. It feels like when I've tried to be too regimented on myself with my schedule, I actually lose a little bit of the magic that you have to have when you're a creative being. It's that tricky balancing act, right? Between like, how can I grow as a profitable handmade business? And how do I keep that human element of the business that got me started?
Unlike Chris and Stacy, Josh Smith of the Green Beetle Shop has remained primarily a one-man business by choice.
So see, I just kind of cross pin. So I'll just put a pin on one side going one way and one pin on the other side going the other way, and that will pretty much hold everything where I need it to be. And that way it's a little bit easier than trying to hold things down with paper strips or wax strips, or like little pieces of wax paper or something like that. So this has worked pretty well for me. I'm Joshua Smith. I'm the owner and creator of Green Beetle Shop. I began this business in college. It was kind of just a hobby to work with insects at the time. I've always loved insects ever since I was little. I would run around the backyard here at the farm and would catch cicadas and beetles and moths and things. And I just started collecting specimens and sourcing specimens from around the world I thought were interesting, and I just started teaching myself how to work with the specimens and the process of rehydrating and pinning and spreading and all of that. So that was kind of the first thing that I did with the business, and from there I just started framing them in just simple store-bought frames, and I would just sell a few on Etsy. And so that was how that part of it started. It was just kind of a hobby.
Josh believes that his rural location offers distinct advantages. Living and working in smaller cities and towns allow creatives to be big fish in smaller ponds.
We're like an hour from Chicago. We're only 2 hours to Indianapolis. We can get just about anywhere we want in like a day's car ride. So that I think is really unique and really interesting, to be so close to big areas, but then able to stay within your little rural family community. That's part of it, kind of a mild isolation, I think is a good way to put it.
Omaha has accepted Artifact with open arms. It has been incredible. In fact, recently, one of the banks that I do my business with approached me and said, we want to do a promotion that celebrates our interest in small business, and we want you to be one of the people that we showcase.
Sometimes people feel like the big creative things are happening in these big cities, but there's a lot of magic happening in like smaller places like Northwest Arkansas. Someone gave me some advice really early on in my career, and they said, wherever you're at, think of yourself as like the local creative. You want to be like a creative that in your community people think of. And you want to be Stacy Bloomfield, the creative powerhouse, not Stacy Bloomfield, just the small business owner. Like I painted a mural this past week. I'm always trying to find ways to be like involved in the local creative and small business community. I do craft shows. I feel like I'm super duper connected with the community here, my audience here, the people who buy my products. They've been buying them year after year after year. They show up at every craft show and support me. That's something that because I'm in a small place like Northwest Arkansas, I can actually do.
Becoming the successful local creatives did not happen overnight for any of these entrepreneurs.
I had my first child about 9 years ago, and I couldn't find any art for her room that I really liked, so my husband encouraged me to make my own. So I made like an illustration of a seahorse. It was just drew it on like a manila envelope with a Sharpie, and it was like, cool. And my husband said, this is great. Have you heard of Etsy? Which at the time was kind of a newer handmade marketplace. So I very carefully listed a few illustrations that I made, and we put them on Etsy, and I sold nothing for a really long time, and it was awesome. And it took me about 2 years to build up momentum to where I started getting noticed on Etsy, and some blogs started featuring my work.
It's this one right here. I bought this one off of Craigslist from a guy who did vehicle upholstery.
Right.
And I brought it down into my basement in my little bungalow that I was living in at the time, and had never really sewn on a commercial sewing machine. And I remember when I turned it on, it has what's called a clutch motor, which depending on the pulley size, this one was just set up to sew very fast because it's sewing larger pieces. And I remember being totally intimidated by it and having that moment of self-doubt where you're like, I just bought this thing and now I don't know if I'm going to sew my hand off with it.
Despite their humble beginnings, these entrepreneurs took advantage of what unique skills they had and created something they love.
It started with a passion with insects, and that just kind of came natural to me. I enjoyed studying them and working with them, and then just sourcing them just kind of became fun, and creating those relationships with breeders and suppliers and things like that just really came naturally. And then woodworking was always something that I had done with my dad and my grandfather. We always worked and did projects and things, so I'm pretty handy with tools and construction. So I've been able to build anything that I need for the business, from furniture to frames and all of that.
I've done a lot of different things. But then the job that directly preceded Artifact, it was based out of Atlanta, and they had the idea to take eBay's completed auction listings, which is millions of nodes of data, and create a searchable database that could be applicable to not only like estate planners, but also insurance for loss and collectors, so that we could have an understanding of what's fair market value on the secondary market for these objects. I was helping them create hierarchical taxonomies to house all these millions of nodes of data on. So to create these taxonomies, it requires an understanding of not only how collectors collect and how they think, but the items themselves.
Building a successful business required taking advantage of existing skills as well as acquiring new ones, especially in the realm of sales and marketing.
So when I decided to do the retail recipes course, it was several $1,000s, and I felt like in my gut I needed to do it. I just felt like it was the right thing. I knew Grace, she was one of the first retailers who ever reached out to me wanting to carry my product. I feel like the reason I've grown is because when I meet someone and I feel like they know something that I don't know, I'm not afraid to ask them for help or to give me some expertise. So she was the person I knew at the time who understood wholesale and had a course about it, so I just ran with it. I was a small business just trying to figure out how to grow, and so I just went for it. And I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but retail recipes really helped a lot.
I'd say really the only thing was kind of just getting better at like retail skills, so like when you're at a show, how to present yourself and how to dress and how to speak and how to engage with people. That was something I was pretty good at, but I hadn't really done extensively, throughout my life. So that was really probably the only thing I think that I continue to get better at is probably, selling myself and selling my product.
Learning how to harness the power of social media has contributed to their success.
In terms of like where my revenue is coming from, direct customer, Instagram is the #1 driver, 10 times more than Pinterest. I have my own customer base that I contact through social media and my mailing list, and it's just about getting them engaged still and caring about what I'm doing and the products we're making. So it's this tricky part. I would like to make so many different products, but I have to be very focused about the ones that I put energy in. Because I need like those people, the 25,000 people who follow us on Instagram, I need at least 1,000 of them to want pillows. This will be really cute photographs so people can feature it on social media in their kids' rooms, armchairs. You got to make products that people want to photograph. Isn't that crazy? Like that's what you have to do now.
We started off with a really like rudimentary website, and then when we upgraded it, we started seeing all these new people that were finding us, and when we started working more on our social media, we started finding our numbers were growing, especially with Instagram, and we were able to partner with some people that could help influence who found us on Instagram, and that really helped. So we went from probably 300 or 200 followers a year ago, and we're over 3,000 now, and we'll probably hit 4,000 here by the end of the month or next month.
The biggest advertising that we have had thus far is the people that already own our product that tell other people. a restaurant really loves our apron, and that they're not shy to tell other people, like, we really like this apron. Or somebody who has one of our market totes at their son's baseball game, and it does everything they need it to do. I love a product endorsement like that.
People don't want to just be sold to anymore. They want to be part of an experience. So that's probably what I focus a lot of our attention on, is like the social media that I run. I just try to let people be a part of what I'm doing, a part of my life, a part of my story, and a part of the work I'm making.
Having a passion for the work is a common thread among these entrepreneurs and the key to their success.
I always took the money that I made from the company and like reinvested it back into the company. And I actually didn't pay myself a salary for a while because I just kept taking the money and putting it back into the business. Mm-hmm. If I started the business because I wanted to make money, then I wouldn't have done it.
A lot of times you've got these moments in the life cycle of a business that's a growing business, like I'd mentioned earlier, where you're very much like dealing with this body, and you're taking turns with maybe a partner, and you're giving this body CPR. You're trying to resuscitate this. But the minute you take your hands off of it, it dies. And there are moments like that in a business where, like, we're moving down the runway, we're bumping and it's not pretty, but we know we're gonna get liftoff, so we've gotta get through that moment. And the person that sets out to create this business that they think is gonna be this boom, this monetary success, a lot of them don't have that stamina, grit, and fortitude to do a 100-hour work week for years on end. Unless their absolute crazy passion is money. And they're out there, those people are out there. But if you just think it's a good idea and it's not even something you'd personally buy into, good luck,
If you want to start a handmade business today, the biggest thing is you have to find something that you're passionate about. That has to be kind of the forefront of what you do. You have to be passionate about it. You always have to continue to grow it and refine it and just have that story of growth and of, having a mission. And if you can do that, the next step is really just to tell people about it. You still have to make those personal connections with people, with other artists, for support, with, shows and stores and, bloggers and all that kind of stuff. You have to make those connections, but you have to have a website. You should be on at least one of the social medias that fits your business.
I feel really personally fulfilled. And I also feel like because I've been doing this for 9 years, I've just learned a lot just by like trial and error. I have a ton of skills that I wouldn't have had otherwise because I've had to learn how to market. I've had to learn how to like brand. I've had to learn how to create a cohesive company.
The decision was kind of made for me because I was out of a job. Also, I was kind of like, what am I going to do for work? And I just decided, well, hey, I'm just going to take Green Beetle Shop to the next level and just do it full time. So that's really when we started, hitting the show circuit. We started doing shows in bigger cities, and we started going to Chicago. We started going, back to Indianapolis and doing these larger craft and handmade shows, and just things have been steadily moving ever since. You can't move them at all or they'll break. Yeah, those are our newest thing. We're one of the largest group of beetles, so they're pretty big.
One thing I can say is I have tremendous pride for what I have done, because I've done it with transparency, and I've done it with integrity, and I've done it with authenticity. I have new challenges now because in many ways, it's not me just making these decisions. I have 12 employees and I have a family. So I have to very carefully weigh in that and find a middle ground between continuing this upcycle of growth, but yet not losing a grasp of why I did this in the first place.